What I'm about to share is not a mindset hack or a motivational trick. It's a fundamental rewrite of how you understand reality. The moment you grasp this, the story you've been living under starts to dissolve. Here's the radical truth. The world around you isn't fixed. It exists in potential, waiting for your awareness to decide what becomes real. You are not a passive witness to a pre-written script. You are the one holding the lens that brings a specific version of reality into focus. This isn't airy philosophy. The observer effect, made famous by experiments like the double slit, shows that what's merely possible behaves one way until it's observed, and then it solidifies into something definite. Translate that into a human life. Your attention is the measurement. Your focus is the selection. What you repeatedly observe, consciously or on autopilot, crystallizes into the facts of your day. Most people think they're just seeing what is. They're not. They're choosing what continues. Wake up and scan for problems, rehearse old disappointments, and your nervous system, your decisions, and your environment will harmonize with that timeline. But shift the lens, observe from trust, possibility and identity level alignment, and the field around you reorganizes. New signals, new choices, new outcomes. This video reveals the one shift that changes everything, moving from observing as the old self to observing as the future self. Once you change who is looking, what you're looking at changes. Not someday, now. You're not stuck in the same patterns because fate decided it. You're stuck because your attention keeps collapsing the same version of reality again and again. Each morning you wake up and unconsciously check for the same problems, revisit the same disappointments, rehearse the same fears, and in doing so you're not just noticing your life, you're actively voting for it to continue. The observer effect doesn't just happen in physics experiments, it happens every time you choose what to notice, what to dwell on, and what to emotionally fuel. And here's the one shift that changes everything. Stop observing from the eyes of your old self, and start observing from the version of you who already lives the reality you want. This isn't about vague daydreaming or hopeful wishing, it's about embodying the frequency, the posture, the presence of that future self, and holding it as you move through ordinary moments. You check your phone as them, you respond to challenges as them, you walk into rooms as them. When the identity behind the eyes changes, the details of the world in front of you begin to reorganize. At first, the difference is subtle, less reactivity, more clarity, a calm that doesn't break so easily. Then opportunities start finding you. Conversations shift, timing improves. You realize you're no longer chasing change, you've become the change. The old timeline will try to pull you back, old habits, old triggers. But each time you notice it, you simply name it as the old lens. Take a breath, and return to the perspective of the self who has already arrived. That is how you train reality to meet you where you choose to stand. Not by forcing outcomes, but by becoming the observer who makes them inevitable. One shift, held consistently, is enough to rewrite the entire story. And the choice to make it exists right now in this exact moment. You are not living the same story over and over because the universe is cruel, or because you are unlucky. You are living it because without realizing it, you keep choosing it through the way you observe your life. Every thought, every feeling, every habitual focus is a selection. When you wake up and immediately scan for what's wrong, when you replay the events that disappointed you, when you imagine the worst before it even happens, you are not just noticing your reality, you are sustaining it. The observer effect is not confined to the realm of quantum physics. It is happening right now in your mind, in your body, in your energy. And it will keep happening, whether you are conscious of it or not. But here's the shift, the only shift that changes everything. You stop looking through the eyes of the self who is still waiting, and you start looking through the eyes of the self who has already arrived. This is not about pretending or forcing yourself to believe something you don't. It is about tuning into the frequency of that version of you and making it your default state. The way they breathe, the way they stand, the way they respond, let it become yours now. The moment you adopt that lens, the moment you hold that identity, reality begins to reorganize around you. At first, the changes are subtle. A situation that would have triggered you before now feels neutral. A decision that seemed impossible now feels clear. People respond to you differently, without you even trying. And as you keep holding this new perspective, the field responds more boldly. Opportunities that felt distant begin to appear. Conversations open doors. Timing starts to align in ways you couldn't have planned. It feels less like you are chasing change, and more like you have become a magnet for the life you want. This is the quiet power of the observer effect. It's not about trying to control every detail. It's about becoming the version of yourself who naturally aligns with the reality you desire. When you are in that state, the old timeline has less and less pull, but it will try. Old thoughts will surface. Familiar fears will whisper. The difference now is that you see them for what they are. Echoes of a version of you that no longer exists. You name it, you take a breath, and you return to the observer you have chosen to be. And every time you do that, you weaken the old signal and strengthen the new one. This is not magic. This is not luck. This is the mechanics of creation. The identity you hold shapes the lens you look through, and the lens determines what you notice, how you feel, and what you choose next. Over time, those choices build the life you live. Most people never change the lens, so their life never truly changes. But the moment you do, really do, everything begins to shift. You are not here to wait for proof before you believe. You are here to choose who you are, now, before the evidence shows up. That is what collapses the potential into reality. That is what rewrites your story. And that choice is always here, in this exact moment, waiting for you to make it. One shift, one decision, one identity, that is all it takes to change everything. So try this right now without forcing anything. Close your eyes and let the noise fall to the edges. Call in the version of you who has already crossed the threshold. The one whose shoulders rest naturally, whose breath is steady, whose decisions feel clean. Notice how they would interpret this exact moment. Notice what they care about and what they no longer feed. Let their posture become yours. Let their inner tone replace the static in your mind. When you open your eyes, don't drop it. Carry that baseline into the next tiny action in front of you. Answer the message from that state. Tidy the space from that state. Drink water from that state. You're teaching your nervous system a new home, and the world learns who you are by what you consistently embody. The old lens will test you. It will arrive as a familiar thought, a tightness in the chest, a reason to delay. Don't wrestle it. Name it for what it is, an echo, and let one steady breath break its momentum. Ask, how would the arrived version of me meet this? Then take one honest step that aligns with that answer. You don't need fireworks, you need fidelity. Small, precise repetitions shift trajectories faster than sporadic bursts of effort ever could. As days pass, you'll catch the earliest signs of reconfiguration. Less reactivity to the things that used to hook you. More clarity where you once spun in place. A quieter kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. People will start mirroring back the steadiness you've chosen. Timing will feel kinder. Options you couldn't see will register because your attention is no longer occupied with proving the past. This is not coincidence, it's coherence. Your observation has stopped feeding the loop, so the loop has started to loosen. Keep it simple. Morning, claim the baseline before the world touches you. Midday, return to it for one full breath and make the next choice from there. Evening, acknowledge 3 moments you held the new lens and let gratitude lock it in. This is not performance. It's calibration. You're not convincing reality. You're becoming the observer for whom a different reality makes sense. And if you need a line to mark the turn, use this one quietly and often. I observe as the one who has already arrived. Say it. Stand in it. Move from it. The field follows the observer. Hold the lens and watch the world catch up. And when the world starts to catch up, you'll notice something remarkable. It doesn't arrive all at once in a dramatic explosion of change. It arrives in waves, subtle at first, almost easy to miss unless you're paying attention. A conversation that would have once drained you now leaves you feeling energized. A decision you used to agonize over now feels obvious. The right people begin to appear at the right time, and instead of doubting it, you recognize it as the natural outcome of who you've decided to be. This is the quiet, steady magic of the one shift. Reality no longer feels like something you're chasing or waiting to be given. It begins to feel like something that's meeting you halfway. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances because you've stopped letting the old observer dictate what you see. But here's the thing, the old identity won't go quietly. It will try to reassert itself in familiar ways. Old fears disguised as logic, old habits masquerading as just how life is. These are not signs that you're failing, they're signs that you're in transition. Every time you choose the new lens, you weaken the old one. Every time you hold the frequency of the self who has already arrived, you collapse a different future into now. Soon you'll realize that you're no longer trying to manifest things, you're manifesting a state of being. And from that state, the things take care of themselves. Opportunities flow, alignment becomes your default. The gap between intention and reality gets smaller and smaller until the life you once envisioned is simply the life you live. The one shift isn't something you do once and forget. It's something you return to over and over until it stops being something you remember to practice and starts being who you are. That's when you know the field has fully reorganized. That's when the observer and the observed have become one. And that's when you realize you haven't just changed your reality, you've changed the one who was living it all along. And when that realization lands, that it was never really about chasing results but about becoming the kind of person for whom those results are inevitable, everything begins to feel different. The urgency fades, replaced by a steady confidence. The fear of what if it doesn't work dissolves into a quiet knowing that it already is. You stop measuring your progress by what shows up instantly and start noticing the deeper markers. The way you move through challenges without losing your center, the way you trust your timing without forcing outcomes, the way you choose with clarity instead of reacting from habit. This is the work beneath all other work, shifting the one thing that determines everything else, the observer. And as you keep living from this place, life reflects it back in ways both small and breathtaking. An idea lands in your mind, and instead of doubting it, you act. A door opens and, instead of hesitating, you step through. People treat you differently because you're showing them a different version of you. The external shifts because the internal has stabilized. But understand this, the field isn't responding to what you want, it's responding to what you consistently are. This is why most people never see lasting change. They try to force the outside while remaining the same inside. They visualize a new life, but keep observing from the old identity. They take action, but the energy behind it is still tangled with fear or lack. And so reality mirrors back the same patterns, dressed in slightly different forms. The one shift breaks that cycle. The moment you hold the identity of the self who has already arrived, you're no longer waiting, you're selecting. You're no longer hoping, you're embodying. And because you're embodying, the field reorganizes. You can't fake this, but you can choose it. And the more you choose it, the more natural it becomes until there's no separation between you now and you then. Eventually you'll look back at the old lens you once lived through and wonder how it ever felt real. You'll see it for what it was, a habit of perception, nothing more. And in that moment, you'll understand the truth that changes everything. You were never trapped by your circumstances, only by the version of yourself you kept observing from. Change the observer, and the entire landscape shifts. Most people live under the illusion that reality is something happening to them. They wake up each day and believe they're simply observing the world as it is. But what they're actually doing is choosing again and again which version of reality they'll keep alive. The mind is like a lens, and that lens decides what comes into focus. Every thought, every emotional reaction, every story you repeat is a selection, a vote for a particular timeline to become solid. This is why life can feel like a loop. You think you're stuck because nothing is changing, but in truth nothing is changing because you're still looking through the same eyes, the eyes of the old identity. You might want something new, you might visualize a different life, but if the one doing the observing is still anchored in fear, scarcity, or self-doubt, the field simply mirrors that back. It doesn't respond to your wishes, it responds to your state. Here's the one shift that changes everything. Stop observing as the person who is still waiting, and start observing as the person who has already arrived. Don't wait for the circumstances to prove it. Step into it now. Feel the posture, the breath, the quiet certainty of that version of you. Let it become your default. Approach your phone as them, handle challenges as them, walk into conversations as them. The more consistently you hold that lens, the more the world rearranges to match it. At first it will feel subtle, A decision that once felt heavy will become simple. A problem that used to consume you will barely register. People will respond differently without knowing why. These are the early signs that you're no longer feeding the old timeline. And as this shift takes root, opportunities appear, timing aligns, and life begins to flow in a way that feels almost effortless. This isn't about forcing outcomes or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about finally aligning with the truth of who you've always been beneath the layers of fear and conditioning. When you hold that truth in your observation, reality has no choice but to mirror it. The field is always listening. The only question is which version of you is speaking. Choose the one who has already stepped into the life you want, and keep choosing them until there is no longer a gap between the reality you imagine and the one you live. When you truly understand this, the struggle to make things happen begins to dissolve. You stop forcing, stop chasing, stop trying to micromanage every detail of your life. Instead, you start living from the frequency that makes those details inevitable. The gap between intention and manifestation narrows, not because the outside world suddenly became easier, but because you finally aligned with the version of yourself who naturally belongs in the reality you've been trying to reach. The shift isn't a dramatic event. It's a quiet, consistent choice. 1,000 micro decisions made from a higher baseline. Waking up and choosing presence instead of panic. Meeting uncertainty with curiosity instead of fear. Acting from clarity instead of reactivity. Each choice reinforces the identity, and each reinforcement makes it easier for reality to catch up. You'll notice synchronicities begin to multiply. Random messages arrive at the perfect moment. A conversation you weren't expecting opens a door you didn't know existed. Problems resolve themselves without the fight you used to brace for. These aren't coincidences, they are confirmations, proof that your observation has shifted, and with it, the entire structure of your experience. This is what it means to create consciously, not to force your will onto reality, but to embody a version of yourself so completely that reality reorganizes around it. When you understand that your perception is not just a lens but a generator, you stop waiting for life to change and start being the change that life responds to. So the invitation is simple, but not always easy. Stop observing from the place you've been and start observing from the place you are going. Let every glance, every decision, every response come from that vantage point. Do it long enough, and one day you'll realize there was never a leap to make. You've been here all along. Keep practicing until the new vantage point feels ordinary. Hold the posture, the breath, the inner tone of the self who has already crossed over. Let that baseline escort you through small, forgettable moments, the ones that actually build a life. Read the email without shrinking. Say no without guilt. Say yes without bargaining. Clean the room as if you deserve clarity. Spend money as the steward you trust yourself to be. Create without waiting for permission. These are not trivial acts. They're signals to the field about who is looking out through your eyes. When the old pattern taps your shoulder, tight chest, looping thought, the urge to delay, recognize it quickly. Name it. Lower your shoulders, take one steady breath, and ask, how does the arrived version of me meet this? Then move by one honest step. Precision beats intensity. Fidelity beats hype. Reality learns your preferences from what you repeat, not what you promise. Soon the proof accumulates in quiet ways. Fewer spirals, cleaner boundaries, decisions made once instead of 10 times. People begin to treat you like the person you've chosen to be, because you've stopped negotiating with your old self. Momentum stops being something you chase and becomes something you carry. Days stack, coherence deepens, and what once felt like effort turns into rhythm. If you need one line to anchor this season, make it simple. I observe as the one who has already arrived. Say it before you stand up in the morning, before you answer, before you act. Let it set your frequency, then let your actions confirm it. Keep choosing from there until the choosing is no longer a choice. By then you won't be reaching for a new reality. You'll be realizing you've been living in it. And that's the moment everything changes. Not because the universe suddenly decided to favor you, but because you finally stopped contradicting yourself. Your observation, your state, your choices, and your actions are no longer pulling in different directions. You've become coherent, and coherence is magnetic. Opportunities that once seemed far out of reach begin to feel natural, even obvious. The right people seem to appear exactly when you need them. The timing of events feels uncanny, as if reality itself is conspiring to meet you where you've chosen to stand. This isn't magic, and it isn't luck. It's alignment. You've tuned your inner frequency to the reality you want, and the field has no choice but to reflect it back. From here, growth becomes exponential. You're no longer wasting energy resisting what is or chasing what isn't. Instead, every bit of your focus is feeding the reality you're living into. And because you're feeding it consistently, it grows. Your life starts to look and feel less like a reaction to circumstances, and more like a deliberate creation. The truth is, this shift has always been available to you. It's been here in every moment, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to stop observing through the eyes of who you've been, and start observing through the eyes of who you're becoming. Once you make that choice, and keep making it, there is no going back. So hold the lens, live from the vantage point of the self who has already arrived. Let your days be built from that place. Watch how reality reorganizes itself around you, not in a single dramatic instant, but in the steady, undeniable rhythm of a life finally in tune with itself. That's the one shift, and when you live it, everything changes. To master it, you don't need grand gestures, you need consistency. In the beginning, it's a choice you make deliberately, over and over. You catch yourself drifting into the old perspective, and each time you return without judgment to the lens you've chosen. Every return is a repetition. Every repetition is a reinforcement, and soon the act of returning becomes unnecessary because you've stopped leaving. Make it part of your mornings before the world touches you. Anchor it midday when distractions pull at you. Review it at night so your last thoughts match the reality you're building. Over time, this is no longer something you practice. It becomes your natural state, the place you live from without effort. That's when the shift is no longer something you do. It's who you are. And from there, life keeps aligning in your favor, not once but continually, because you've mastered the only part of reality you ever truly control, the observer. Mastery begins the moment you stop treating the shift as a trick for hard days and start treating it as the way you move through every day. Choose the lens before the world makes the choice for you. Catch the first flicker of the old story. Name it without drama. Breathe once to clear the static, and answer the moment as the self who has already arrived. Let ordinary actions carry the new identity. Read the message without shrinking. Speak the boundary without apology. Take the next step without bargaining with doubt. Progress is measured less by what shows up outside and more by how quickly you return to center, how quietly you decide, how lightly you carry what used to feel heavy. Relapse into the old perspective doesn't erase the work, it reveals where to strengthen it. Treat each slip as a cue to recommit rather than a reason to retreat. Gratitude at night seals what you practiced by day, so your nervous system learns, this is home. Over weeks, returning becomes remaining. The lens holds on its own, choices align without effort, and results arrive as a consequence rather than a chase. So hold the lens a breath longer than comfort, then a day longer than habit, then long enough that it becomes who you are. Live from the vantage point of the self who has already arrived. Let your days be built from that place, and watch reality reorganize, not with a single burst, but with the steady rhythm of a life in tune with itself. That's the one shift. Live it, and everything changes. When you've lived in that rhythm long enough, you'll notice something subtle but undeniable. You're no longer trying to stay in the shift. You've become it. The thoughts that once pulled you off course lose their grip. The emotional spirals that used to take hours or days to recover from now dissolve in moments. Your decisions start to flow with an ease that feels both natural and powerful. At this stage, you're not working to create alignment. You are alignment. Opportunities show up without you needing to hunt them down. The right words come when you need them. The right people enter your life at the right time. And because you've mastered the inner vantage point, you recognize these moments instantly and act without hesitation. This is the essence of mastery. No matter what's happening around you, you hold the frequency of your chosen reality. You can walk through uncertainty without losing your center. You can hear doubt in your mind without obeying it. You can face challenges without collapsing into the old lens. The outside world no longer decides who you are. You do. That's when you realize this isn't just about changing your life once. It's about living in a constant state of creation, refinement, and expansion. You keep holding the lens, and reality keeps answering. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've become the kind of observer for whom this reality is inevitable. So let this be your turning point. Anchor the shift until it becomes your nature. Live every day from the vantage point of the self who has already arrived. And let the rest of your life be the proof. That's not just the one shift that changes everything. It's the one shift that changes you. That's not just the one shift that changes everything. It's the one shift that changes you. And here's the thing most people overlook. Living this way is far simpler than it sounds. The real challenge isn't in doing it. It's in understanding it deeply enough that you trust it. Because once you understand it, you stop questioning whether it works and start proving it to yourself every single day. To get there, you need to see what's actually happening beneath the surface. In your mind, in your energy, and in the way the world responds to you. A few moments from now, I'm going to break down exactly why this shift is so powerful, how the observer effect makes it inevitable, and what subtle mistakes can keep you stuck in the old lens without even realizing it. When you hear this, the pieces will click, the hesitation will fade, and the path forward will feel clear in a way it never has before. Because this isn't about chasing motivation or forcing yourself to think positively. It's about aligning with a truth that's already been here all along. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. From that point, holding the lens becomes second nature, and reality has no choice but to meet you there. What I'm about to explain is the part that most people miss, and it's the reason why they can hear all of this, feel inspired for a moment, and yet nothing in their life truly changes. You've heard the phrase, what you focus on expands, but that's just the surface. The deeper truth is found in the observer effect, the fact that what you consistently observe doesn't just appear in your awareness, it solidifies into the version of reality you live. In physics, when particles are left unobserved, they exist in pure possibility, a wave of infinite potential outcomes. The moment they are observed, the wave collapses into a specific form. That single act of observation determines what becomes real. Now bring this into your life. Every time you look at your world through the eyes of your old identity, you're collapsing a timeline that matches that identity. Not because you want it, but because you've chosen to keep observing from there. This is why change feels so hard for most people. They try to take new actions, they try to think new thoughts, but the observer behind those actions is still the old self. It's like trying to paint a new picture while using the same old filter over your vision. Until you change the filter, the scenery will look the same no matter what you do. The beauty is, once you truly understand this, the process becomes simple. You don't have to force yourself to make things happen. You only have to choose which version of yourself is doing the observing, and then keep choosing them long enough for reality to reorganize. And when you see the first proof that it works, your trust deepens, your resistance fades, and the shift accelerates. Here's where it becomes practical. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in a day. You only need to make the choice in the moments that matter. Each morning, before you let the noise of the world set your tone, pause and step into the identity of the self who has already arrived. Feel their posture, their calm, their certainty. Even if you hold it for only a few breaths, you've already begun tuning your frequency for the day. Throughout the day, notice the small triggers, an email, a glance, a thought that would normally pull you back into the old lens. Those are your checkpoints. In that moment, take one breath, loosen your shoulders, and ask, how does my arrived self see this? Then make the smallest action from that vantage point. Don't aim for perfection, aim for consistency. At night, review 3 moments where you stayed in the new lens. Relive them for a few seconds, not as a mental replay, but as if you're letting your body memorize the feeling. This tells your nervous system, this is home now. The more often you do this, the less effort it takes, until it's not something you have to remember. It's just who you are. This is where the shift turns into mastery. Not when you can hold the lens for an hour during meditation, but when you can hold it in the middle of a conversation, at the grocery store, while handling the everyday moments that quietly shape your reality. That's when you stop trying to change your life and start living in the reality that matches you. And when you reach that point, you'll realize something profound. The old life you were trying to escape never had control over you. The only thing that kept it alive was your attention, and the moment you stopped feeding it, it disappeared, not with a fight, but with silence. There comes a moment when the new vantage point stops feeling fragile and starts feeling inevitable. You wake, choose your center before the world chooses it for you, and carry that quiet certainty into the plainest parts of your day. The old narrative still knocks, but it no longer gets a seat at the table. You recognize it as a leftover echo and let one clean breath dissolve its momentum. From there, decisions are simpler because they're made by the self that already lives your answer. Conversations soften, timing aligns, and what used to require force now moves with you because you've become the person it was waiting for. If you want a single compass to end the drift, let it be this: notice, name, return. Notice the old lens when it rises, name it without drama. Return to the observer who has already arrived. Repeat until returning becomes remaining. When gratitude closes the day and presence opens the next, the nervous system learns the rhythm of your chosen reality, and life learns to mirror it back. You don't have to prove this to anyone. Let your days be the proof. Let small, ordinary choices broadcast the extraordinary identity you've claimed. Hold the lens a breath longer than comfort, then a day longer than habit, until it no longer feels like something you practice, but something you are. From that place, you won't be reaching for a different life. You'll be realizing you're standing in it. That's the one shift. Live it, and everything changes.